We are thrilled to be joined by Arizona Senate President Warren Petersen, who just got done with a very late night and early morning. What time did you get to bed this morning?
I got home at about 3:30 this morning, slept for a couple hours, and went to my first speaking event. And a couple of meetings later, and now I'm here.
So you and your fellow senators wrapped up a $17.6 billion budget plan. Congratulations.
Thank you.
You were heard on the Senate floor saying, "See you in January." And I want to know, how difficult was this budget to get done? Seems like you were going back and forth with the governor. The Senate was, along with the governor. And seems like the Senate got a bipartisan effort passed. Some Democrats signed off on some things. Some Republicans said, hey, we really don't like that. Yeah. But I've read about a lot of hurt feelings last night and this morning between various Republicans who didn't get what they wanted. How difficult was this budget process?
Yeah, no, anytime you're in divided government, it's a real challenge, certainly not an envious one. Our strategy has been pretty straightforward, pretty simple, and we basically put together a budget where we set aside, just for simple terms, not exactly this, but a third for the governor and the Democrats, a third for the House, a third for the Senate, and we leave capacity so that members can, in those bodies, can work with their members to come up with their priorities. So we were having challenges just to be out there, you know, and you know, the House has its dynamics. It has a caucus that, you know, has some challenges. They have some fractures in their caucus. And we were able to, of course, the governor, all she has to do is agree with herself, right, for her budget items.
Yep.
But we were able to get her priorities that were not too far left. You know, if they were too liberal, we wouldn't allow them in. So she'd come up with something else until we were okay with it. And we were able to build up her box or portion of the budget. We had the same agreement with the Senate. We started to move. House members started to come on and filled up about half of their asks. And then we were getting ready to send it over. And there was discussion with the House about just going ahead and finishing up, you know, their member asks so that it could come over and kind of help speed up the process. So we did that. As we began to fill it up and getting ready to send it over, you know, the House adjourned until Monday. But we were sitting in a situation, we believe we had the governor's signature, we have the Senate, you know, majority of Senate members, and we had enough House members to pass out a bipartisan budget, which is, when you're in divided government, that's exactly what you have to do. And I mean, this was a good budget. It leans right. It wasn't uber conservative, but it leans right, which is about as good as you can get. We had a business tax cut in there. We have infrastructure. We have lots of focuses on public safety. We had additional stuff on border security. So, I mean, this is a good Republican budget. I felt good about it passing. Disappointing that, you know, we have to wait a little longer to see what happens on the House side.
All right, Arizona Senate President Warren Petersen joining us on KTAR. So let's hit a couple of the highlights. The ESA program, for the private schools, the scholarships. Any changes to that program? Any cuts? Any caps? Anything like that?
Yeah. So as far as anything that goes along with school choice, the Republicans, as you know, were very much protecting school choice, very much protecting parents' ability to decide how they want to educate their kids. So that was one of those things. Every time the governor or the Democrats had something to affect school choice, all of their asks on school, you know, reducing school choice, we said no, and we you know, we stayed firm there, and they accepted that. So there's no changes with us making sure parents in Arizona have school choice.
Let me ask you a quick question, because
Sure.
I know one thing that was reported was the governor had suggested, how about we say if a family makes over $200,000 a year, their kids wouldn't be able to receive the money from the ESA program. So in other words, let's the folks who were paying to put their kids in private school anyway and who have the money, they don't need the state's money. Why not cut that back?
Yeah, so I'll just say, you know, same answer. I mean, anything that affects school choice and parents who want to make decisions, we're not touching that. As far as K-12 goes, we added a lot of things. Democrats had a lot. You know, that's one of the areas where we get along well with the Democrats is on K-12, especially like infrastructure items. And so we had over $100 million in maintenance and building repairs and building renewal, those kinds of things for K-12. And so that is where we went with the K-12. There was also part of the trade-off here for them not touching school choice was that we approved the expenditure limit. And so we're already funding over the constitutional limit. The legislature has to approve that in order for that funding to be distributed to the districts. And we approved that not only for this year, but the following budget year as well. So that was a concession that the Republicans made, kind of a trade-off, if you will, with the Democrats.
So one more quick question just on the procedure part here. The House actually passed a budget bill, was it a week or two ago? I don't remember now.
Something like that,
on party lines, the governor said that's dead on arrival. It's not going to go anywhere.
Yeah.
Why did they do that rather than, in other words, why did they kind of jump out of the process of the House and the Senate Republicans negotiating with the governor and just do do their own budget that way?
Well, the Democrats didn't even show up for the vote. And I can't speak for them exactly why. You would have to ask them. But from my members, our perspective, of course, was that's just really kind of, those things take a lot of time. I mean, you're talking hours and hours and hours to do a budget. It's you go through the overnight a lot of times, and not only that, like Ledge Council, everybody drafting and working on all these things. It just I've been down there 13 years. I've authored and worked on authoring lots and lots of budgets, and that just was not a viable budget. The budget has to be. I mean, it was a fake budget, if you will. The budget that's going to be signed by a governor in Arizona has to be a bipartisan budget. Of course, it's forever doesn't know this. You have to have the Senate, the House, and the governor has to sign it. And some people don't know this, but in Arizona, the governor has even more power than a veto. She has something called a line item veto.
Right.
So if you don't have an agreement with her, it doesn't matter what you send up. Let's say you send up a budget and she doesn't like your stuff and just your stuff. She can just line item those things out and keep everything else that she likes in there.
Arizona Senate President Warren Petersen joins us. Arizona senators approved a $17.6 billion budget last night. Seems like the governor will sign off on it. I'm going to ask you one more quick one here, come back and talk a little bit about this D-backs funding bill as well. So you're Senate President. What have your discussions been like with the House over the last few days? Presumably you're talking with them and telling them, hey, you just called it a fake budget that they essentially got through. You worked on a more bipartisan effort. What are you hearing from them? What are you telling them in terms of getting this across the finish line?
Yeah, so I mean, the conversations were going well. Things were going fine. The plan was as I mentioned, the plan was at first was we send over a budget to them with capacity, and then they work to fill it in. As we got closer to passing it, House members were coming to us and saying, hey, I want to make sure I get this in. Okay, well, if you're a yes, it goes in. And we just asked the question, do you want us to finish off putting their members? And we did. So then it looked like all the votes were there. The part that was bizarre was that then we had the adjournment until later. Now they're talking about just passing out a baseline budget. So, but I don't see how they get support for that. So it's just, we have a budget right now that has, I believe, if it goes on the board, if it can be put up for a vote, you've got the Senate approval, you get the House approval, and you get the governor approval, and that's all you can ask for in divided government.
And just so I'm clear, if what you're saying is if the House Speaker puts this bill on the floor on Monday, it passes, but you're hearing now he may not do that. He may do something more restrictive, which is not going to work anyway.
Yeah, what we're hearing right now is what they're looking at is possibly either amending it or doing a baseline budget. So
a baseline budget is just to fund the basic necessities of the state, not actually doing a full budget.
Yeah, baseline budget is pretty much you take last year's budget. You just it's like a continuation, basically.
But you have senators who are out of town now. They're gone. They're not going to be here next week.
Yeah, and not only that, but we're looking at, July 1st is right around the corner. We should have been done with this budget a month and a half ago.
Right.
Let's talk a little bit about this Diamondbacks funding deal, up to $500 million in tax dollars. The bill also includes some non-binding language that the D-backs should also put in $250 million. My big sticking point on this, tell me why I'm wrong, is if that's non-binding, where's the assurance that the Diamondbacks are going to contribute there? Are you confident that the team will contribute to make sure that Chase Field's taken care of and this doesn't all fall on the taxpayers?
Yeah, I think the Diamondbacks have been great partners. We know that they've been the state of Utah has been mentioned more than any other. They would love to take the Diamondbacks. And I'll just tell you
Do you think that's a real threat, though? Do you think the Diamondbacks would really leave?
I do.
I don't think they want to leave here.
I do. Here's kind of where I really rested on it anyways, whether that's kind of a side issue that I also weighed in for me. But what it really boiled down to me at the end of the day is this is a government facility. It's not a private facility. They don't own it. And just like, Barry knows this in land, tenant landlord law, a landlord, if you own property and you have somebody using your facility, you have, maintenance require or repairs. You need to do repairs to the facility. So, I mean, we do have some obligation to them, I think. And this is Arizona's team. And I think there was, this was very deliberated, discussed, debated. And I think we put together a consensus that everybody can live with. The Diamondbacks have shown they're good players. They have shown they're huge donors. They're a big part of the community, very generous people. And they've brought us, a great sports team to our state. So I think they are good for their commitments and what they say they're going to do. They have been, I believe, in the past. So.
2 quick questions on that. Some of the language in that bill says the Diamondbacks will spend up to $250 million, but there's no actual requirement of that. Are the Diamondbacks
It's non-binding? Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, is there something in there that I'm not seeing that would make this required for them to spend it? Are they going to spend it? Why not have that as a requirement in the bill?
Well. I think it's important to, you talk about the $250 million or the $500 million or whatever. It's $9 million per year is what really. So sometimes we go to these big numbers, but it's $9 million per year is what the state general fund is doing for this public facility. Why not do that? Well, you'd have to go through all the negotiations. I wasn't there. I wasn't in that part of the negotiation when that was settled on. But the final product got a consensus, and that's what we ended up passing.
And second, is the governor on board to sign that?
Yeah. So this is what we currently have right now is something that the governor's on board. The Senate, it got enough Senate members on it, and it has enough House members on it. So.
All right, Arizona Senate President Warren Petersen is with us. So a couple other things that were voted on yesterday, and again, some folks in your caucus a little bit upset. There was a bill that would have put a new election law on the ballot for Arizonans to vote on in next November. One that would have basically made Arizona law similar to Florida's law, right. Which would have had us get the results on election night a lot faster.
Right.
I understand there was a deal on that, something that
So I actually
changed.
So as far as the Senate bill, not the referral, but the Senate bill, I met with Florida. I authored the bill for Florida-style elections. We put it on the governor's desk, first bill that went on her desk. She vetoed it. So fast forward, now we're looking at doing a referral. There was an amendment to change it from that original language that we had moved forward. There were a couple of members that were not okay with that, and they ended up voting no, at that point. And so they wanted to keep they did not like that amended version, and so they were off. The original version they were fine with, but they weren't okay with the amendment.
Was it Alexander Colodin who made the last-minute changes that ended up with people voting no on it?
Well,
he's upset.
There was a member in the Senate who offered. Obviously, he can't offer his amendments on our side, but there was a member who offered an amendment in the Senate on his behalf.
Okay,
so from what I understand,
and that's what changed it last minute, and that's why some now Republican senators voted against it.
That was the change, and some senators came off because of that amendment.
And because the Senate has sine die, the Senate's closed for the year. You've adjourned for the year. This can't come back. It's over.
Well, we haven't adjourned. We've recessed. So we've recessed sine die. So once the adjournment occurs, actually once the House also does their motion, and then it's officially adjourned at that point.
Arizona Senate President Warren Petersen, thank you so much for a few minutes with us today.
Yeah.
We greatly appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me on.
Thanks for watching The Chris and Joe Show. Click to see more from Chris and Joe, and tap the button in the middle to subscribe to KTAR News.